Good morning. So I've been seeing a lot of words about wrestling with God and overcoming and receiving our blessings. So, it got me to thinking about, what that really means. And I've definitely had moments myself where I've been wrestling with God. And, so I got to researching and listening to different sermons about it and reading the word about it. And so I just wanted to share with you guys like what I found and what I've come to understand. So I want to read Genesis 32 verses 22 to 32 with you guys. I know you probably already heard it. It's a very popular passage in the word, but I want to read it for context here. So it's wrestling with God. Verse 22. He arose that night and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 sons, and crossed over the ford of Jabbok. He took them, sent them over the brook, and sent over what he had. Then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. Now when he saw that he did not prevail against him, he touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was out of joint as he wrestled with him. And he said, "Let me go, for the day breaks." But he said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So he said to him, "What is your name?" He said, "Jacob." And he said, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed." Then Jacob asked, saying, "Tell me your name, I pray." And he said, "Why is it that you ask about my name?" And he blessed him there. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. Just as he crossed over Penuel, the sun rose on him, and he limped on his hip. Therefore to this day the children of Israel do not eat the muscle that shrank, which is on the hip socket, because he touched the socket of Jacob's hip in the muscle that shrank. So wrestling with God is more common than we think. We might not call it that, but it's the inner struggle with our faith and our relationship with God. And it's so many of us deal with doubts, stress, and anxieties, in our spiritual journey. When the word tells us that, we shouldn't, essentially, at least myself, like when, especially starting out, I'd feel like, oh, I shouldn't be depressed because I have the Lord. I shouldn't be questioning these things because that's what faith is, but then you go walk it out. And we do have these, we have these questions, we have these doubts sometimes, and they're not all at once sometimes, but like even, a month or so ago, I'm almost 10, I think I'm 10 years walking, or since I started believing and reading and praying. But even just, last month or so, there was something that came up and it makes you question your faith at times. But so it's not uncommon for people of faith to, to sometimes feel distant from God, or to question him, to question his word, his existence, just and what he's said to us, and then we feel this sense of an absence of his presence. It's because it's not always it's not a tangible feeling at times. Like I said, I think I said in a different video, but when we're in the presence of God, it's all joy and peace and it's affirming. But we have to go out and do our physical lives, and so it's easy to become vulnerable or susceptible to deception, the lies of the enemy, the god of this world. So questioning our faith at times, it's normal. And when we wonder why we're not seeing our prayers answered, answers to our prayers, or the words that he spoke to us coming to pass, it's normal to question that. So this is, I think, when we go into that wrestling part. So for me, and maybe others, but it's like when I get alone with God, in his presence, or just those times of reflecting, observing and taking things in, or when we're alone at night in our beds, that's when we usually start going into deeper thinking, questioning things, and going over the day's events and our sorrows and the things that, like, it's one of our, at least for me, it's like I said, it's in our beds at night, and then those moments where you're just reflecting on things, when these deeper questions and thoughts come up. It's usually not in our day-to-day when we're busy out and about. So That's definitely a time, I think, probably like it said in the word with Jacob, it was at night when he was alone. So, and then sometimes we have to keep going back in prayer. Keep going back to God in prayer over the same things, or sometimes we try to negotiate with God in our in our fleshly state, maybe where we haven't been humbled to think that we can negotiate with God, but we try to remind him of his promises to us. And either way, these moments, these wrestlings, these questionings, as long as I think we keep at it, it leads to a spiritual growth, or a rebirth of our spirits, of our faith. It makes us aware of our own weaknesses and our need for God. And so it allows us to persevere, through our doubts. And, eventually we come to surrender to God, to his will, his way, and his timing through these things. So Jacob left that experience of wrestling with God with a physical reminder. The hip, his hip was touched, and out of socket. And, so that we don't forget that we're not greater than God. God just touched, the word says he just touched his hip. And so just a kind of it's a transforming and a humbling. When you're wrestling and struggling, we usually come out with some kind of bruises, whether physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. There's something that is inflicted upon us, when we have these struggles, so it is humbling. It is humbling. And then, when it's to help us realize who we are and who God is. But it's a clinging to him and refusing to let him go, until we receive the blessing. Sometimes we get to such a desperate place, and that's not a bad thing, to be desperate for God, to be at the end of our rope, so to speak, and we're like, God, we just have to go through it. We just have to be in those moments of struggles and wrestling where we're just desperate for his answer, for his blessing, for whatever it is that he has said to us, for understanding, as much as humanly possible in what he wills to give us. So I think God, he wants us to cling to him. He wants us, to keep our faith, and because without our faith, it's impossible to please him, and we have to keep our faith for the things that he's promised us. Because there's a verse, I can't recall what it is, the address of the verse, but how someone who's unstable in all their ways or changing of their mind, how can they expect to be blessed by the Lord at all? And I might have got that wrong. That was my paraphrasing, definitely. So Jacob's name was changed, and that signifies like his transformation, his rebirth, his putting off of his old self, his eyes were open to his need to rely on God, and to stop trying to get the blessings, on his own in deceptive ways, because his name was Jacob, the deceiver. But so like us, we constantly, just because God would speak a word to us, and then in our strength, we think we need to do something to help. We need to do something to bring it to pass. But God, he wants us to stop. Like we can't interfere, we're just supposed to surrender the promises, surrender the things of God, and stop trying to do things in our own strength, to truly rely on him. We have to persevere in our surrendering to God. No, it's really hard. It's hard for our flesh, when most of our lives we're thinking, I can do this. I want to do this. I want to prove to myself. I want to prove to others that I can do this. Well, with God, it's like completely opposite. He's like, I realize your weakness. Let me do it. I am God. Be still and know that I am God. And it's the Lord that will fight for us. He wants us to surrender everything to him, to truly rely on him. And you know, when we do that, I think in our fleshly minds we'll think, well, why would I do that? You know, I don't want to seem weak, or I don't want to rely on, I can do this. But it's really freeing. That's where, you know, we can lay down the burdens. We don't have to worry. We don't have to stress. We don't have anxiety, to know that, and we give it to him, saying, okay, not our will. We know it's not our will, it's his will, and it's going to be done no matter what. So why do we fret? Why do we worry and consume ourselves with trying to do it on our own or in our own strength? Because he wants to do it for us. Our job is to believe it, you know, and to partner with him. You know, we have to trust him along the way with all of our hearts, and not lean on our own understanding as we partner with him and walk alongside him in this process, you know, of whatever it is coming to pass. That's real helpful to realize. Really freeing. We will get the victory. We will receive our blessing, and we will overcome when we let God lead and let God get the glory. We will, because he's not a man that he should lie, or the son of man that he should change his mind. Like I've said before, his reputation is on the line. Okay, we already have the victory. It's been established in heaven, and we have to take our hands off of it, and we have to say, your will, your way, your timing, because he knows better. His ways are perfect. His timing is perfect. Okay, you know, keep praying, keep believing, keep reading. Oh, there's a fly in here. Keep reading his word, and keep worshiping through it. You know, thanking him in advance for what he is about to do, what he's done, what he's going to do, because he who promises faithful. Okay, I thank you guys for watching. If you want to like and comment, subscribe if you haven't. I hope that this has been informative, insightful, or whatever, you know, with our struggles, our spiritual struggles, and maybe why we're not seeing answers to our prayers, maybe why we're not seeing our promises come to pass as quickly as we wanted. But you know, that wrestling, it's good for us. So you guys have a blessed day.